Hello everyone, it's Jess Conto, your Wasteland Reviewer. Welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where we take a deep dive into a particular film. And this week, it's finally 1937 as we keep moving along with John Ford's films. And he did a film with Shirley Temple, which surprised the hell out of me. And we'll be talking about Willie Winkie. And joining me for this episode is my wife, Jess. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
So, for those who haven't tuned in to Welcome to the Wasteland before, we have 3 segments. So we start with coming attractions for the week of February 2nd. Yes, we made it out of January. Which, I don't know if there was a few pretty bad stinkers in January, but it was more like, January. But February's starting off with quite a slate, but then we'll be getting into our feature film, Willie Winkie, and then giving you a couple of recommendations. So, let's get started with our coming attractions. This is an interesting weekend. There's literally only one wide release, and it's Argyle from Matthew Vaughn. And then there's a whole lot of streaming releases, limited releases, definitely starting to get some of those like indie-type comedies, and also some of the international films for the Oscar shortlist that are starting to get some releases, like How to Have Sex, The Monk and the Gun, The Promised Land. But, Jess, what are you most excited to see?
I am most excited to see Scrambled.
And why is that?
Looks very funny and relatable.
It does look very funny and relatable.
As a mid-30s.
Yeah, yeah. Who's almost 34, like in the movie.
No, I'm going to be 33.
Jess, 1 year and a day is still close to being 34.
That's true.
So, I know how old my wife is, for the record. Thank you. But no, I remember seeing the trailer for this and being super excited. And even before this, so shameless plugs to one of my Scribe talks that I did with Camille Mana, and she's in the film. And I did that interview way back when that was in the festival circuits early in 2023. And no, the trailer really sells this well, as we've actually both seen it already. But it definitely sells the fun comedy about it. And also, you know, there's some emotion that goes along here because it's about a woman who's realizing that her eggs are aging quicker, and she's trying to decide, like, am I going to freeze my eggs and stuff like that? And, you know, society's like, my God, you're in your 30s, you have no prospects or children, hag. It's like that kind of comedy, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, and her being at multiple baby showers and all that comes with. All of my mid-30s ladies will relate.
All I'm going to say is Jess
honestly
laughed so hard so many times.
There's a lot that's relatable there.
Mm-hmm. And authentic. Mm-hmm. That was probably the one that I was most excited to as well, but I also wanted to throw a little shout out to another film dealing with a different time period, but also equally as comedy about a woman's reproductive organs, which is Fitting In, which stars Maddie Ziegler, who plays a young girl who finds out she doesn't have a uterus. And what does that mean for her boyfriend that she has now? And how she kind of explores her sexuality and dealing with that as this young girl. And I watched the trailer, I'm like, I'm sold. Like, this looks like a really fun and different kind of coming-of-age story. Because, like, both of these films deal with things that you don't see talked about in movies a lot.
The less sexy parts of life. Yeah.
And I think that's fun. So I hope this weekend is ruled by these 2 comedies. But realistically, the movie that's going to make the most money is Argyle. Which I'm a huge Matthew Vaughn fan. I would love to love Argyle and be super excited about it. But what concerns me is it keeps showing the same trailer over and over again without, like, really expanding on anything. And also the CGI cat's really distracting to me.
Red flags.
Like, really distracting to me. And
it's a Scottish fold.
And the whole entire trailer is based off of who's the real Argyle. And I'm waiting for this movie to be like, it's not that important. And then I'm going to be like, the whole trailer sold that way. But it doesn't have a great cast and everything, and horrible haircut for Henry Cavill.
I hate it.
But you know, it's an interesting weekend of a wide variety of things. I feel like, but a lot of them are like really small indie type films, and I don't know how wide releases they're going to get. So keep an eye out for Scrambled and Fitting In to see when they stroll around into your local theaters. But Willie Winkie is our feature film of the week, and this is based off of the Rudyard Kipling story, because this does indeed take place in India during British occupation. And, you know, this actually, so I had to look this up because I wanted the context. This is 10 years before Indian independence. Mm-hmm. So this is still like, it's really crazy thinking about watching all these John Ford films and thinking about the historical context of this. Mm-hmm. Like, India was still part of the British Empire.
Mm-hmm. Colonial India.
Some of these films are closer to the Civil War than they are now. It's so weird thinking about that kind of context. But what's funny is this film was shot in California. The whole thing was shot in California. First of three films that Shirley Temple and Cesar Romero were in together, and the other two are two of her biggest films. And what's interesting is Cesar Romero is playing an Indian character.
We don't love that.
Which specifically a Muslim Indian character, as you know, Latinos do. Wild time, the 1930s in cinema. This is very interesting because it's not one of Shirley Temple's films where she does a lot of singing and dancing, which is what she was very famous for. This was nominated for 1 Oscar for Best Art Direction. There was tons of union issues going on, which is why they had to switch filming locations and all kinds of stuff going on. So that was kind of causing a lot of drama on the set. And John Ford hated child actors, hated working with children, but he was actually really, really impressed by Shirley Temple as an actress and the amount of professionalism she had, to the point where they actually became friends. And he became the godfather to one of her daughters. Oh. So, like, they became really close for years after this film. Then you asked, John Ford picked this up. This is obviously was not a John Ford film that he put together. He took it because he was excited about the big budget that this adventure film was going to have, which adventure film is, like, this is tagged as an adventure film.
Maybe a little bit of a liberal interpretation.
Yeah, very loose. Like, there's no adventuring or action until literally the last third of the movie.
Yeah.
And also, McLaughlin, one of his favorite actors to work with, who won an Oscar for being in one of his films, plays Macduff, the one soldier who has, like, a really close relationship with Shirley Temple's character. And Shirley Temple actually said this is her favorite film of hers.
Probably because she didn't have to dance like a show pony and sing.
There you go. Jess has a lot of feelings about Shirley Temple.
It's
Would you like to share any of this background?
I mean, it really just boils down to my grandmother always wanted me to be girlier than I was. I was a tomboy growing up. And she really pushed Shirley Temple, and the more she pushed, I'm my grandfather's granddaughter. He's way more stubborn than I was. Or he was more stubborn than me. But anyway, the more she pushed, the more I decided I just hated Shirley Temple. I really didn't watch anything with her in it, but I was just like, I hate her so much. So I never watched anything with Shirley Temple in it until now.
Which is really funny, because the reason I picked Jess specifically for this episode, I didn't look up this movie. That's the thing. I'm going into a lot of these John Wayne...
You wanted to torture me?
Well, I'm going into a lot of these John Ford films blind. But the reason I picked this weekend is Jess's birthday weekend, and I thought it'd be easier for me to, like, just film with her and not try to schedule other filming with somebody else instead. So we could share this together on her birthday weekend. And then when I looked it up finally, and was like, oh no, it's a Shirley Temple movie.
Did you even know about my feelings with Shirley Temple before this?
100%.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I knew about your feelings. I had no idea she was in this. So when I picked it, I just thought it sounded weird. When I was, like, going through, like, these 80 John Ford films we were going to do.
I have no ill will towards Shirley Temple.
Well, so let's dive in. Jess, what were your general feelings about Willie Winkie?
I thought that, honestly, Shirley Temple was pretty charming. Like, I get it. Would I still be annoyed by her singing and dancing and stuff? Yeah, probably, if I watched those. She was too perfect. That was my biggest issue. Same as Julie Andrews. I didn't watch Mary Poppins when I was a grown person because I just decided to, I don't know, I was a weird kid. I'm a weird adult, but I was a strange child. But
Jess just hates Julie Andrews because I love Julie Andrews.
I may. No, I hated it. You can ask my mom.
I know.
From the age of 5.
I'm joking.
From the age of 5, I decided I hated Shirley Temple and Julie Andrews. No idea why.
Well, you do know why.
Well, I guess I do know why. They represented perfection to me, and I hated it. So
let's be real here, Jess. Mary Poppins was only nearly perfect in every way.
She was really a Mary Sue. Any Mary Sue type characters I just dug in and hated. But anyway, Shirley Temple in this, I don't know if I'm reading into it too much, but as one only child to another only child, I kind of get it, because I also irritated most of the adults in my life with endless questions that were a little precocious.
Well, and she started asking some interesting questions at the very beginning of the film, like, because I was about to say...
reasonable child questions.
Which, like, started asking, like, why are they called Indians and everything? Yeah. And, like, this conversation started happening. I'm like, oh, like, they're actually having this conversation.
Yeah, and she was like, but we have Indians back home. And her mom was like, well, actually, Christopher Columbus was wrong about where he landed, so these are the real Indians, and we just called them.
Christopher Columbus sure messed up.
Yeah, like, they dug it. I was like... alright, this is...
give this movie some credit towards the start.
Well, those were some reasonable child questions, too. Like, I mean, they were annoying, but they weren't unreasonable to ask.
Well, no, I feel like this was very authentic in the way that they portrayed this child being dumped in a place with no other children, except for a snarky little shit kid, who... I love the fact that Macduff messes with him multiple times in the film, and I thought those scenes were absolutely hilarious. I don't know what it says about me, but that kid was a little shit, so I don't care.
As children often are. I mean,
yes.
They're kids, but yeah.
But no, I thought Shirley Temple was really good, and there, I'll get to it in a little bit, but there's one particular scene where she had some really good acting going on. But, like, you have the setup and everything. You get to India, and of course, like, the main Indian character is played by Cesar Romero. He's playing Khan, who's a Muslim Indian. Which, like, of course. Of course. And, like, there's this one help character that is not a great representation of it, what Indian people, who Indian people are, and I'm just like...
a lot of them look pain, like, there's a lot of, like, smiling, like, you're being held hostage as you probably were.
Which...
it was scary.
I guess getting in... well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. The politics of this movie are murky at best, because, like, there's a scene which... this scene's fine. It's setting up the perspective of the Colonel, who, to be perfectly honest, is Shirley Temple's grandfather in the film, who's not exactly a great person. So, like, it's understandable, like, he's like, we're here, the British are here to protect the Indians, and Khan is terrible because he wants to keep fighting. And it's just like, of course that's the perspective the British are going to have, but does the film have that perspective? That's where the issue becomes. And then you get to the end of the film. And, like, Shirley Temple's character is, like, calling out Khan for, like, always wanting to fight. And then they come together all nice, which, like, to be honest, it's important to show people connecting with each other. But the key here is equally. But what's the last scene of the film is a smiling Cesar Romero sitting there, watching the British marching away, doing their thing, in control of India, and everybody's happy. That's the problem.
Yikes.
So, like, this is very much taking the perspective of, like, you know...
British colonialism.
British colonialism, which aged so well. Which, like...
much like British people.
It's just one of those kinds of things where it's just, like... there's so much politics in John Ford's films. And so much of it has aged so poorly. And that's my main gripe with this film in general. Because when you take a step back, which I feel like the film tries to... it has some tonal issues. Because... for the first hour of this is a fun
goofy
romp, and
silliness.
It just so happens to take place in India during British colonialism.
During a tumultuous time.
Yeah. It's one of those kinds of things where it's like, Shirley Temple's great. And I love the dynamic that she has with McLaughlin.
It's very sweet.
They have such great chemistry. I love Macduff. He's such a great character in this film. Outside of, he casually just drops a bunch of racist comments about Indian people.
We don't love that.
No, and that's also a problem that's sprinkled throughout the film, is that they openly throw around, like, very derogatory things about the Indian people.
Yeah, like, everything you get, you gotta sterilize, because dirty. I was like...
And calling them savages, that kind of stuff.
Well, and when they get off the train, they're just immediately swarmed by beggars.
Yep.
And it was like, wow, prey to stereotypes. How original.
It's not a great representation of India.
No.
In California. For the record.
And even the carriage guy, I guess he's supposed to be looking... Is he supposed to be looking after her?
Yes.
Oh, he's supposed to be looking... And he just kind of sits in the front like...
Yep.
Although
and then he gets fired because he didn't do his job.
I did find the only part of that I found funny had nothing to do with that. It was the fact that Shirley Temple asks him a question and he doesn't even listen to it. He just says yes. I'm like, that is a man who has dealt with children and doesn't feel like dealing with repeated questions. It's just kind of like, oh, okay.
It's like, nope, bye, kid. But their chemistry, the two of them are great. And because she's lost her dad, her mom, that character is a nothing character. And there's no depth to her. There's nothing interesting they do with that character.
Her embroidery looked great, though.
And actually, the more I'm thinking about this film, there's not a So
yeah, what was that romance subplot? I don't even understand.
Well, yeah, they set up a whole romance subplot for a character has no depth to begin with. Why is this romance going on?
It's her to him.
Basically, it was there for a plot point later on to have him not at his post, so that there's a raid over an hour into the movie when that's the first action of this action adventure movie. But no, when this film's just focusing on this young girl meeting a new father figure because she's lost her dad. And their dynamic is beautiful and wonderful. And then it gets serious because, spoiler alert, he dies. He gets shot. And him laying there dying in that scene with Shirley Temple and she sings to him is great. He has this big, elaborately shot funeral sequence. And she just falls onto the bed crying. I'm like, she's doing a great job acting. That's like the heart of the film. But then you have all these other threads going on. Like, there's the fun, like, she gets a dog, and this mean lady is just like, oh, it's a monster! And then, Macduff and her get what they want.
They kind of, like, glaze over the fact that they've exterminated all the dogs because of this woman.
Yeah.
There was, like, she reported a rabid dog, and they're all euthanized, and then the commander sees Shirley Temple's dog. He's like, oh, this isn't a rabid dog.
This British Karen went to the colonel, the manager, and was
like... That poor other kid, that kid's dog was probably killed.
When this film's focusing on fun...
We hate that lady.
Kid comedy elements, like the dog situation and the uniform situation.
Funny that the dog...
Like, those things are the best parts of the movie.
Yeah.
What doesn't work is when this film tries to get bigger than that. Like, it's really well shot, Raid, that they have, and it's intense, it's thrilling. The climax where she runs to go meet Khan, there's some good acting there from Shirley Temple. There's some good tension leading up to, like, this colonel and Khan meeting together. But outside of the filmmaking of it, the messaging doesn't work. A lot of these characters lack any depth or dimensions. These are not dynamic characters. No. And honestly, this is pretty high up in, like, I've watched 30-something films of John Ford so far in this series that I'm doing, and this is in my top 10. Why? Because there's not a lot of great movies, and I'm starting to realize, like, wow, like... I'm trying to get to the point where it's like, where are all these John Ford classics, which, like, apparently it took him a couple decades into his career to really start making, like, I'm going to be doing Stagecoach in March, so I got another month.
Oh, jeez.
So,
it's like that SNL skit, The 100 Stories of Terror or whatever, where they start complaining, and he's like, it's called 100 Stories of Terror, they're not all going to be a winner.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those kinds of things where it's like, I just guess... Gaining the context that somebody as prolific as John Ford, who made over 100 movies, a lot of them aren't going to be great. You can't make 100-something great movies. And that's the thing. A lot of other like legendary directors didn't make films as regularly as John Ford did, like, at this time. So it's interesting in thinking about, because like you have somebody like a Christopher Nolan today, who's probably outside of like the Spielbergs and the Scorseses, him and Paul Thomas Anderson and Fincher are like the top tier, like, real auteur directors. They make films every couple of years. John Ford had like 4 movies in 1936. I had a whole month of 1936. Putting in the context of that. And it's starting to realize that a lot of these films, and also, are really much of their time. In terms of the perspectives and the politics of it all.
Yeah. So
this one is very much of its time. But Jess, do you have any other thoughts that you wanted to throw in there about Wee Willie Winkie?
No, I think I got them all.
Okay. Well, would I recommend this? I think if you're looking for some like fun Shirley Temple stuff, it does have that. It's just you have to deal with a whole bunch of other stuff. And in a world where we're still dealing with colonialization and like the aftermath of it, it's very interesting watching this film in 2024. But we have some recommendations for you. So Jess, what would you like to recommend to our guests?
I would like to recommend, I enjoyed Fargo Season 5. I would like to recommend that.
I love Season 1. Season 2 is one of my favorite seasons of television. 3, I really liked. 4 was flawed, but I liked it. This 5th season really felt like it was going back to the quality of like the first 2 seasons.
I haven't seen them, so I don't know.
First of all, like, Juno Temple is incredible in this. She like anchors this whole entire show. And she gives this incredible performance that has so many layers to it.
I feel like it's hard to act opposite John Hamm.
Well, and John Hamm, this honestly is probably some of the best work John Hamm's ever done. Like, I've never watched Mad Men, and I know that's like peak John Hamm. But like, this is some incredible work. And he's
a bastard.
Yes, he's a very topical character.
Yeah, no spoilers, but yeah.
Yes, a very topical character. Jennifer Jason Leigh is just like a just bossing around like and destroying every single human being with her words.
I feel like you shouldn't love her, but I can't help it. Like I weirdly respect her. I hate her as a person.
I think that's the feeling that a lot of the other characters in the show have, that kind of feeling towards her character, is that they want to hate her, but they kind of can't.
Ann Coulter, if she were smarter.
But, like, I just want to shout out a couple other of, like, there's so much great tension. Oh, yeah. And this is such an incredibly well-made show.
I had no idea where it was going.
I just want to shout out some of the other cast members, because, and Joe Keery from Stranger Things plays Gator.
Oh, man, yeah.
Rika Morjani, who's from one of my favorite shows, Never Have I Ever, from Netflix. She's in this. She plays one of the police.
Like her a
she
lot.
Is so good.
Yeah.
And her husband's shit.
Yeah, we hate the man-child.
Sam Spruill, who plays Ol Munch, who's like... he is a fascinating, philosophical character thrown in this.
Ola Moons.
Also, David Foley, Danish Graves. One of the best names of a character ever.
What a
he
guy.
is such a great character in the show, too.
Also a bastard, but competent. Extremely competent.
He's very good at his job. And Lamorne Morris loved him, too, as one of the troopers.
Whitfar.
Yep. And the cast is incredible. The tension is so great, and I love the rhythms that it takes from the original film and subverts them in a lot of interesting ways.
I like that there's not a lot of exposition. Like, anything that comes up is organic.
Well, yeah,
it's relevant to the story.
This is an incredibly well-written season of television, and Noah Hawley, I hope whatever he moves on to, I think he's involved in some kind of... I don't know if he's involved in the new Alien film or the Alien show, because there's a new Alien film coming out and a new Alien show coming out, and I have no idea if they're related in any way, shape, or form, but who gives a crap? Because,
isn't that the question?
Yeah.
At this point in time.
I don't think it matters anymore.
Intellectual property.
Because one of them, I know, is at least retconning Prometheus and Alien Covenant and not caring about what that set up.
Oh, darn, I already saw those.
It's like one of those kinds of things that's just like...
I've seen all the Alien films, though, I think. Which is weird. Usually I'm missing in franchise stuff, but...
Well, because I had a collection of all 4 of them. I should have just... I'm starting to... So... Side note, I'm starting to regret my thoughts when I was younger. I'm like, oh, I don't really like this anymore. I'm not going to keep this. I'm starting to regret doing that with my physical media, seeing as it's all going away.
Yeah. Aw, you didn't know.
I was an ignorant 20-something-year-old who just like, oh, this is stupid. I don't want to own this. But it's like...
Rewatching, there's value to rewatching things.
Well, yeah, there's value to rewatching, especially like Alien 3 was David Fincher. And
yeah, that makes sense, because I hated it too at first reading, and
well,
then I was like,
David Fincher also hates it. So, but it's one of those kinds of things. We often have the same taste. My recommendation, so I got the opportunity to cover most of the films from the French film festival, Animation First Film Festival. And one of the ones that I watched this past week was Nina and the Hedgehog's Secret. And it's this cute little, like, it reminds me of like a Harriet the Spy kind of story, where it's like a young, rambunctious girl who's kind of like taking charge and trying to solve a mystery going on because her father gets fired.
The Nancy Drew.
Yeah, that kind of thing too. Her father gets fired from his plant that he works at because the shit foreman was stealing money. And she and her little boyfriend, who pals around with her, she's trying to find the money and like show that her dad was innocent and stuff like that.
Getting in over her head, probably.
Yeah, like it's that kind of story. Actual crime. It's that kind of story, but it's really well animated. I really love the characters, and it has some like fun little fantastical elements. Like how the hedgehog fits in is a lot of fun.
I feel like France is really good at that because you had like Petite Maman.
Yeah, like, so like this one, I have no idea when any of these films are getting U.S. releases, but when this does, it's definitely worth it. And I'm also sad they didn't give me Robot Dreams, which is nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Oscars this year. Which was shocking. I cannot believe that got nominated. But those are our recommendations, and that's a wrap on this episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. Jess, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.